השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן. לחיים. And our blessing for Torah study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. All right, well, happy Thanksgiving. I'm so echoey. Does it bother you guys?
No.
It's fine? Okay.
Adds texture.
I just feel like I'm talking into like a tunnel or something. All right. It is wonderful to be with you this weekend. Very excited to jump into our Torah portion of Toldot. Toldot is a very interesting Torah portion. Starts with Rebecca and Isaac finally getting pregnant. One of the most interesting lines of Torah where she says, Lama ze anochi, right? Like, if this is how it's going to be, why do I even exist? Which is a great other study, especially for women who are pregnant. Today, of course, we are jumping into the third part of the triennial cycle. Yes? Second part? Third? But it's Isaac blessing his son. Second. I always say the wrong one. That's why I'm like, because it's in the middle, but it goes to the end. Okay. So, all right. So Isaac is blessing his son, Jacob, but he thinks he's blessing Esau. At least that's what the text tells us. So we're going to be delving into that. Before we do, I want to share with you so Rabbi Bookman, who was the rabbi here when I came to Beth Am, he used to train other rabbis. That was part of his side hustle. He had a business where he trained other rabbis, and one of the things that he taught me was to figure out what kind of a rabbi you wanted to be. Do you want to be an Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob? Okay, so this is Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, and what was the difference? Abraham was the visionary, right? He had the dream, he had the vision for something different. What am I going to create that hasn't been here before? Jacob is that charismatic community builder, right? He's the one who actually gives us the 12 tribes. Everybody else, it's only one child, right? But if we're going to be as big as the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore, right? We need somebody who's going to bring people in. That's our Jacob. So who was Isaac? Isaac, huh? The consolidator, okay.
He just hung around at home.
He hung around at home. Okay, so Isaac, according to Rabbi Bookman, oh, yeah. The microphone's up here. Sorry, I'll just, yeah.
No, they consider him, I think, the perfect sacrifice because he never had to leave the land, and the land always,
Okay.
cared for him.
All right, so this is perfect, and this is true. For the interest of this exercise and what Rabbi Bookman was trying to teach, Isaac was the redigger of wells, right? This is actually what we see in last week's Torah portion, right? Was that Isaac redug his father's wells, and he didn't leave the land, right? So he didn't expand anything. He didn't envision anything new. He was this bridge. Right, that's a very nice way to put it, okay? I would also put the guy who maintains the status quo. All right, so this is, so you can see, when he was coaching rabbis, which do you want to be? Do you want to be the visionary who wants to go out and start something new, probably like a boutique little community, thinking of something else? Do you want to be at a Beth Am and bringing in hundreds of people, right? Or are you just going to be the person who maintains? A lot of communities need different things at different times, right? But not the sexiest description of Isaac, right? Like the redigger of wells, the guy who can't leave the land, who doesn't do anything for himself. And this week's Torah portion, especially the part we are focusing in on, pictures him as maybe a less than desirable father, right? Here he is. He has a favorite son. He wants to bless that son, and he's duped. Right? We know the story. I'm going to retell it just so we're all on the same page, right? Isaac is getting old. He's going blind. He wants to bless his son before he dies. So he asks Esau, his favorite son. They have twins, right? Esau and Jacob. Asks Esau, his favorite son, to go and hunt him some game and bring it back and make him some stew. And he's going to bless his son over his favorite dish. Rebecca, his wife, overhears what's happening and tells Jacob, go and get me a calf from the field, right, that we have, a domesticated animal, right? That's right here. And we're going to slaughter it. I'm going to make the stew. She puts the fur on Jacob's arms so that he can dress up and his blind dad will be able to feel fur, right? Because Jacob is smooth-skinned and Esau is hairy. By the way, that's also how they're named, right? Jacob comes out grabbing a heel, so he's heel grabber. Esau comes out hairy, so his name is Hairy. Also red, so his nickname is Edom, red. Okay, so here we have Jacob dressing up because his mom has told him to try and steal his brother's blessing from his father. And according to the story, it seems as though Isaac believes that this is Esau and blesses Esau, but really blesses Jacob, right? Gives Jacob Esau's blessing. Esau comes home. He gets the stew all ready. He goes to come in, and Jacob says, if you're here, who is that I just blessed, right? And Esau cries, and he says, don't you have a blessing for me too, Dad? Why do you only have one blessing? It's very traumatic. Jacob then runs away. They're apart for 20 years. Don't worry, you get to see the reunion next week. So it's a traumatic story, and it seems as though Isaac is maybe not dad of the year, right? He has a favorite, can't tell his boys apart, doesn't have this extra blessing for Esau. My argument is that maybe he's not such a bad dad. And maybe he's more than a bridge, okay? I'm gonna put it out there. Yeah, we're gonna get, this is Team Isaac Day at Torah Study. All right, I do wanna pause though before we jump into it I'm always struck with the image of Jacob feeling as though he needs to pretend to be someone he's not in order to get his father's blessing, and just how much that can ring true. I mean, it was Thanksgiving, so either you were with family or you weren't with family for a reason, right? And we think about like the roles that we play as kids, how that dynamic changes as we get older, and like who we think we need to be when we're around family, right? So for some, we can be completely ourselves. For others, it's more of a...
If this is Team Isaac, I just wanted to take this time to say, I don't think he was a bad dad. I think Jacob and Rebecca were good at lying, and I think, yeah, he was being someone he wasn't, but at the behest of his mother. And I have a real problem with this story because, and then you could see how distraught Isaac was, and it was a very sad moment, and the whole thing was ruined because Rebecca told Jacob to lie.
Okay. All right. So, okay. I love it.
They're liars.
We're okay. I'm gonna remember because next year I'm probably gonna have to sub again. No. Okay. We'll talk about Rebecca. I love that. Okay.
Be continued.
Yeah.
So this is also pro Team Isaac. So those of us who have more than one child, there are differences in our children, and we see their strengths and weaknesses, or do we? That's where I'm going. So, sometimes we see through rose-colored glasses, and is that so bad? Because you want to see the good in people. And so his oldest, he was a sacrifice. He is pure. He couldn't leave the land. You can't get holier than that. You can't get more committed to the mission, in my opinion, than that, to lay down and say, okay, Dad, do your thing. And here he is committed to the mission, and does he not see who Esau really is? He still wants to bless him. He still wants to give him the blessing that is for the firstborn because, he wants to see the best in him. So I look at that and I think, ooh, there's more to this story than we may know. Maybe he doesn't have to invest so much in Jacob because Jacob already is the guy.
Yeah. Right. We all have, right? Some of us need more attention and hand-holding, right? Whereas others are able to do the right thing without a lot of direction. Okay, I love it. You may have given away the whole Torah study, but I'm just, maybe, maybe. Okay. All right, so I am entitling this Is Love Blind? Because there's a reality TV show called Love is Blind. But, right, and Isaac is blind, and what is happening? Okay, so we're gonna start. I'm sorry, I just put every sentence as a new line, basically. All right, so with text number 1. All right, so we are in Genesis chapter 25, verse 28. Sorry, I went 20 Isaac, because that's the first word. All right, this is before the section we're reading, right? But it's still part of our Torah portion. This is when we find out that the parents have favorites, right? Rebecca, right? Like with her favorite being Jacob. It's so funny, right? Like the way that it reads, even as a rabbi who reads the same thing every year, forget that Esau is Rebecca's child. She seems so separate from him, always like with Jacob, favoring Jacob. It almost feels like Esau isn't her kid, right? But they're twins. They're twins. This is her firstborn. Okay, so the reading here. Isaac, who had taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Okay, so we know Rebekah loves Jacob, right? Sounds like Isaac loves Esau. What is the pshat, the like plain meaning of the text? He loves Esau because Esau gives him his steak, right? Or his venison, or whatever it is, okay? He feeds his dad. That's what it seems like. But I always like to do this, right? What do we know about their personalities? All right. What do we know about Isaac? Roberta gave us a little bit, right? Isaac is pure, never left the land, right? Isaac also was the subject of the Akedah, right? His dad, good old dad, right? Who had a son that he loved, right? Takes Isaac up onto a mountain. This is their first like bonding scene in the Torah, right? Takes him up on a mountain and tries to kill him, right? The angel has to be like, Abraham, Abraham, right? Like not just once, right? But twice. Stop, okay? A little traumatic, right? So what do we know about Isaac? We know he never spoke to his father again, right? So Isaac has some trauma, right, in his past. We know that he loved Rebekah, right? He's the first monogamous patriarch. I don't know where, oh, here.
And his mother died of a broken heart.
Right.
So that's got to weigh on him. He's got 2 kids. His mother died of a broken heart.
Okay. His mother died of a broken heart, right? He goes, not only does he almost get killed by his dad, but when he comes down from the mountain, his mother has died. Okay? You said it's sad. It's sad. It's sad.
But I think it's kind of ironic how they say that Isaac came from the house of Abraham and Sarah, who never lied, but he went up the mountain not realizing that he was going to be a sacrifice
Okay.
until they were at the top.
Okay.
Line by omission.
Yes, okay. So that's very interesting. Okay, so you're reading ahead, but that's okay. Okay. So there is, it's interesting because you point out that like Abraham didn't tell Isaac, right? There's actually something really fun you can do by putting different punctuation. You guys know in Torah, right, there's no periods, commas, or vowels, right? In Torah, it's just the words. It used to be even worse before the Masoretes came, where they were just like kind of in a line. Like there was even not division between words. Okay, so it was even harder to read. When Isaac asks his dad, you know, it says like, here are the sticks, and here is the fire, and here is the knife, but where is the sacrifice, Dad? You know? And Abraham says, God will see to the sacrifice, my son. Right? So we can play with that, right? Okay, wait, blah, blah, blah. Okay, sacrifice, my son, right? Right? So we can put, God will see to the sacrifice, comma, my son, which seems right, or God will see to the sacrifice equals my son. So the rabbis do like play with, maybe he was telling him, and then they really get on with Isaac being this willing sacrifice, right? You can guess that that happened after Jesus, right? That they're like, well, Isaac was a willing sacrifice, right? Okay. But all right. Okay, so interesting point. Okay, so we know that Isaac grew up, as you said also, in the house of Abraham and Sarah, right? And we know, because we read the Torah closely, that they were not perfect, but the way that we talk about our ancestors is that they're perfect, right? So they're in the house of Abraham and Sarah, this righteous home, right? Whereas Rebekah grows up in the house of Laban, right? And what do we know about Laban? Not so perfect, right? what we've seen so far, if this was our first time reading Torah, right, was that Laban was who Eliezer negotiates with to get Rebekah for a wife for Isaac. But what we will see is that when Jacob runs away, he runs to Laban, right? And Laban takes advantage of him, and he ends up working for him for 20 years, right, without getting paid. Okay, so we know that Laban is tricky, and Laban also, right? I don't want to spoil next week for you guys, but Jacob wants to marry Rachel, and Laban puts Leah in instead. Okay, so he accidentally marries the wrong girl after serving for him for 7 years. All right, so we have this righteous house of honesty versus this house of trickery. Okay, so here, looking at number 2, this is, okay, so what, okay, no, it's number 3, really. Okay, Sephono, All right, well, here, on the second part of 3, when it says, V'rivka ohevet Yaakov, she loved only Jacob, recognizing the wickedness of Esau. And how could she recognize the wickedness of Esau? Because she grew up in the house of Laban, who was deceptive, right? Whereas Isaac, this sweet, perfect sacrifice who never left the land, right? Can't imagine being lied to. Can't imagine being tricked. And now we're going to go back to 2 to see why does that even matter? Because Rashi says that there was hunting in his mouth doesn't necessarily mean that it was Isaac's mouth. That there was game in. What does it mean? All right, who's going to read for me number 2? Will you read number 2? Are you reading number 2? I don't know how. I don't remember. Usually it's this way.
Understand, this is the Targum. This is as the Targum renders it in Isaac's mouth. Isaac ate the venison he brought home. But its midrashic explanation is there was hunting in Esau's mouth, meaning that he used to entrap and deceive him by his words.
Okay, so it's not that Isaac is so, I don't know, gluttonous or such a food snob that that's why he loves Esau the most, right? It's that Esau had hunting in his mouth, meaning he would entrap his father, right? He was sneaky. He spoke in a way where Isaac, this beautiful, innocent Isaac, who's so trusting, right, thought that his son was better than he is. But Rebekah could see him for who he is. By the way, I can't, you guys, this is. Thank you. All right, so if you like to read novels, there's a novel that I read 2 weeks ago called The Push, all right? And it's like a parent thinking that maybe there's something wrong with their kid, the same way that Rebekah does, okay? All right, so Rebekah sees something that she recognizes in Esau and doesn't like it, but pure, beautiful, innocent, naive Isaac can't imagine being tricked. All right, so that's what's happening here. Okay, so yes, Paul.
I heard something interesting last night from Rabbi Riskin, who says, why at this point in the Torah does it bring up the issue of the wells being stuffed up? And he says that Isaac saw that this passivity of not going and fighting for what he wanted when the wells were stuffed up, but just moving on. And that's why he preferred Esau, who would fight for things.
I would make that same argument, but even use a different scene, right? Think about Isaac, like being almost sacrificed by his dad, right? Here is somebody who, right, he's so much like Jacob. He is so much like Jacob, right? He's mom's favorite. He doesn't really leave the house, right? And what happened to him? And so what is he attracted to? He's attracted to the opposite, right? Opposites attract, right? He's attracted to the kid who's going to like go and stand up for himself, who's going to speak back, who's going to fight back. In him, he sees strength that he doesn't have. Actually, they're a different lesson. We could look at the parallels just between Esau and Rebekah and Isaac and Jacob. And right? And they're our love story, Rebekah and Isaac, right? So they love the kid that's like most like their partner. By the way, right? The things that irritate me the most out of my Izzy. So this is how it works in my family, is that Henry looks like my spawn and Izzy looks like John's spawn, right? But they have the insides of the other person, right? So the things that bother me about Izzy are the things that I do, right?
As a mother, I think that this is pretty much a lesson on favoritism. I think that we see the differences in our children, but that doesn't mean that we should or can favor one over the other. They're twins. How can your mother possibly love one more than the other?
So, yes, okay, so we can give Rebecca an out because there was a prophecy, right? Right? You have two nations growing in your womb. She knows they're both going to be fine, okay? They're both going to grow to be great nations. We see that Esau grows to be a great nation, even in next week's Torah portion, right? Takes us a few hundred years on the other side. But the younger is going to serve the older. So she's a prophetess. She's trying to make this thing come true. Okay.
So, in terms of Esau, sometimes I think, and I don't know, so I'm here to learn, but sometimes I think of Jack Nicholson and his famous quote in that movie, "You can't handle the truth." Like, there's something about Esau that we need to know and we need to take note of that we need in our world, but it's not revealed to us. And so, like, we can't handle the truth for whatever reason. I don't know. Sometimes I think about that with him. And the other thing is, going back to the wells, in the same portion where we have this rivalry between brothers and the favoritism with the parents, we have Isaac, the digger of wells. And I think, like, well, not each well is like the same depth. Like, for him to dig for water, you have to just dig until you find it. And he always found it, no matter what, which is a whole thing in and of itself. But you have to dig sometimes further. And that goes back to your kids also. Sometimes you have to dig further to get the wine.
All right. Okay. And then I want to go further.
I think unless God directly said to Rebecca, do this, here's the plan, lie to Isaac, then she shouldn't have put her fingers in the pie and figured she was going to do whatever the prophecy was and do something she should have just let it play out the way it would have played out. Maybe Esau would have been blessed. Maybe we'd all be getting along better in this world today if she had.
Okay, awesome. So we're going to look at that. So, okay, first I want to give you this line from the Zohar, because maybe we could also one day do a Team Esau, okay? Zohar on Toldot, right? Yabba Yesia quoted the verse, "A son honors his father, a servant his master," from the prophet Malachi. A son refers to Esau. For in the whole world there was no man who respected his father as Esau did. The homage he paid him made him ruler of the world. All right, so according to the Zohar, Esau is the pinnacle of honoring your father. Okay, so maybe Isaac loved him for good reason. Okay, just putting it out there. Okay, so we see Isaac loved Esau and uniquely wanted to bless him on his deathbed. Okay, so I put this here, little note, right? Abraham doesn't bless Isaac, right? Who blesses Isaac? God, right? Right? Abraham doesn't bless Isaac. Jacob does bless his kids. That's a fun one to read too, right? Because it doesn't sound a lot like blessings, right? But they all gather around. Jacob blesses them, but Jacob is dying, right? Isaac isn't dying. He's old, he's blind, but in this same Torah portion, he goes out and redigs wells, right? We just said that, right? He's still got a lot of fight left in him. Okay, so he uniquely wants to bless his son, tell him he loves him, have this special moment, and Rebecca and Jacob kind of steal it from him. And so number six we have from Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. Zichrono Livracha.
Okay, turn the page. Okay, there you go. Thank you. A little help from your rabbi. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Isaac, who loved Esau, was not deceived as to the nature of his elder son. He knew what he was and what he wasn't. He knew he was a man of the field, a hunter, mercurial in temperament, a man who could easily give way to violence, quickly aroused by anger, but equally quickly capable of being distracted and forgetting. He also knew that Esau was not the child to continue the covenant.
Okay, so we're going to see why he says that.
What is the actual meaning of the birthright and the blessing? Because, I mean, that seems to be the essence of what we're talking about here. He gave something eventually to Jacob that should have gone to Esau. And what did it confer? What did it really mean?
I remember as a kid being like, I don't understand. Didn't this already happen? Right? Because we have earlier, right, when Esau was out hunting and he was starving and he came home and Jacob had the lentil stew, right? He sold him his birthright. Yeah, like what is the difference between the birthright and the blessing? Very valid question. Okay, so I am in inheritance laws in the Talmud, so I could tell you way too much right now about what the birthright is. Right? The birthright of the firstborn son is that he's going to inherit more. Now, according to the laws of the Talmud, like he gets like he would get twice the portion of his brother. Is that so laid out here? According to the rabbis of the Talmud, yes. For the plain reading of the text, no. Right? And also, right, Isaac was the younger son, and he got the blessing and the birthright, right? We actually saw at the end of Abraham's life, right, that he gave the birthright and the blessing and the land, like God said, all to Isaac, right? But it lays out what he does give the other sons to inherit. By the way, Father Abraham had 7 sons. That's like I grew up in a Christian town where they sing that song. Okay, so Abraham had 7 sons who inherited, but Isaac is the bearer of the blessing and got much more than everybody else. Jacob blesses all of his sons. That's like Team Jacob. It's another story. Okay, but all right, Isaac has a specific blessing that he wants to give Esau. So if we're going to look at that blessing now, Rabbi Sachs argues that Isaac knew exactly who Esau was. And if we read the blessing that he gives to Jacob while he thinks he's Esau, right? So in this argument, Rabbi Sachs is saying that he thinks that he was duped, that Isaac didn't know it was his son. There's other rabbis who think that Isaac knew the whole time that he was blessing Jacob. We're looking at one perspective today. This is Jonathan Sachs's perspective. If you look at the blessing he gives Jacob when he thinks he's Esau compared to the blessing a few verses later that he gives to Jacob when he knows he's Jacob, you can see what he was trying to bless Esau with versus what he wanted to bless Jacob with, right? Because when Esau comes home and says, bless me too, Dad, bless me too. Don't you have another blessing for me? Isaac says no, but guess what? He has another blessing for Jacob. So he did have two blessings the whole time, one for each son. But he didn't say that. Rebecca didn't know that, right? Okay. Genesis 27, verses 28 and 29.
May God give you of the dew of heaven and the fat of the earth, abundance of new grain and wine. Let people serve you, and nations bow to you. Be master over your brothers, and let your mother's sons bow to you. Cursed be they who curse you, blessed they who bless you.
Okay. Dew of heaven, fat of the earth, abundance of new grain and wine, right? These are all about money, right? Money, wealth, and then let people serve you, nations bow to you. These are about power. We can't argue back with Rabbi Sachs because he passed away, but we can argue back. What about this last line, Rabbi Sachs, right? Like with your mother's sons bowing to you. Okay. So these blessings are about wealth and power. This is what Isaac blesses Jacob with when he thinks that Jacob is Esau. So what does he want to bless Esau with? Wealth and power. All right, now on number 8, just a few verses later, Genesis 28, verses 1 through 4, we see how Isaac blesses Jacob when he knows he's Jacob.
So Isaac sent for Jacob and blessed him. He instructed him, saying, You shall not take a wife from among the Canaanite women. Up, go to Padam Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and take a wife there from among the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. May El Shaddai bless you, make you fertile and numerous, so that you become an assembly of peoples. May you and your offspring be granted the blessing of Abraham, that you may possess the land where you are sojourning, which God assigned to Abraham.
Okay, so when he knows it's Jacob, he blesses him with the 3 blessings of Abraham, right? He gives him children, land, and blessings. So he wants to bless Esau with wealth and power and blessing, right? And Isaac with the same blessings that God promises to Abraham. So note that he did not give this blessing when he thought he was talking to Esau. That's the important part. He held on to this part of the blessing. So he didn't bless when he thought he was talking to Esau. He didn't bless with the land. He didn't pass on the blessing that he had received from his father, Abraham. Okay. Yes, the patriarchal blessing, right? So Abraham has 7 kids, but the blessing only goes to Isaac, right? Isaac has 2 sons, but the blessing only goes to Jacob of the promised land, and being a patriarch of the Jewish people, like passing on this blessing. Okay. All right. So the point being that Isaac saved this blessing for Jacob all along.
It seems to me that that's the most important part of the birthright. So that was really always meant to be for Jacob.
So there we go. Oh, yeah.
I find it interesting that here we have a patriarchy, and yet it's the women who are driving the direction of where the Jewish people are going. Both Sarah and Rebecca really driving, creating the direction.
But one of my unwritten books is about how God is a feminist. So I think you make that point.
One character trait is woven through all of the patriarchs, the trait of deceit. There is deceit to some degree with each one of the patriarchs, either promulgated by their mother or by their brother, but either way. And there is fraught throughout our history and tradition that we take the unconventional route. Inheritance to the oldest son ends up being the inheritance of the second son. It happens all the way through.
Right, you have to wonder about that. Like when you're like, what is this insistence of the firstborn son when like literally you never do it, right? Right? So yes, there's a lot of yeah, like rule, break rule.
And also the artful way that Rebecca talks to Isaac to get him on board to send Jacob away. It reminds me of this scene in Fiddler on the Roof with the dream where Tevye wakes her up in the middle of the night and he has this bad dream because he has to invoke her grandmother coming down and saying, you can't have her marry the butcher. She has to marry, the sewing guy. Yeah. I love that.
Oh. All right. So the question becomes, if Isaac intended for Jacob to inherit all along, why did he want to have this like moment where he blessed Esau, right? It's good. I haven't exercised yet today.
I have this novel idea that he wanted to bless Esau because he was his son and he loved his son. Okay? And if you want to make a comparison to us people, our people, and God, and how God works and treats us all the time with regard to our continually making mistakes, he still loves us, and he still, it's about redemption.
Okay, beautiful.
Only Bill Silver, you'll remember this, but we studied for many years with a guy named Dr. Peter Sobel, and he said that Isaac had Down syndrome.
Okay, so there's actually, if you want to hear more, my friend, Rabbi David Young, which by the way, my phone has merged our David Young with Rabbi David Young, so a picture of the other one pops up. It's not okay. Anyways, Rabbi David Young wrote his High Holiday sermon about Isaac being, not Down syndrome, but right, but having a differences in learning.
I have a question. In 7, when he gives Esau the blessing, he says, "And let your mother's sons bow down to you." So does that mean that he wants his twin to bow down to him too?
Okay, foreshadowing. Guess what happens? Guess what happens in like the next Torah portion? Is Jacob bows down to Esau. Not once, 7 times. Okay? So it happens. It's a good question of what is it foreshadowing and like what does it mean? It does happen that Jacob bows down to him, but it is not how we would have read that reading this.
So, I mean, one of my 4 sons is named Yitzchak, and I don't know why. When you read this story, you come away thinking you shouldn't name your kid Rebecca. She was deceitful. You shouldn't name your kid Yitzchak for an incredible number. I wonder if I could change it. He's only 38. But Esau, why does nobody name their kid Esau? I mean, Esau, yes, I understand what we're saying, but he wasn't so bad. You never hear of someone naming their son Esau.
Yeah, but Yitzchak does not come off very well, or Rebecca.
This is true. Okay. This is true. So all of our matriarchs and patriarchs, which are held up as perfect, when you read closely, are incredibly, incredibly flawed, which I think is awesome. Right? We don't have to be perfect for God to love us, for God to choose us, for us to have a purpose, for us to be representatives of the Jewish people, right? Just have to try. Got to try. So, my argument by the end of this is that Isaac is the best. So, Hillary, I hope that by the end of this class, you're proud of the name Isaac, okay? All right, so Rabbi Sachs, this was obviously all inspired by Rabbi Sachs. If God intended for Jacob to inherit, why did he want to bless Esau? So Sachs points to 3, as he calls them, extraordinary silences. Okay, so what are the silences? The first silence is the silence after the binding of Isaac. Was it you? Somebody, you, yeah. After the binding of Isaac, we never hear Isaac speak to his father again. But it's not only that we don't hear him speak to his father, he disappears. He disappears until Eliezer comes back with Rebekah and the marriage scene, okay, with her putting the veil down and walking towards him and the sun is setting, right? And we all try to recreate that at our weddings. It's beautiful. Okay, so where does he go, right? We don't know. The text itself is silent. Midrash says that he goes to study at the house of Shem and Eber, which is also really interesting because it's not the part we're studying today, but Midrash also has, when Rebecca goes to seek out the Lord to say, like, Lama Zanochi, what's happening here, that she goes to the house of Shem and Eber. Yes, right? So they're studying Talmud there. But obviously, Abraham is the best teacher, right? The best teacher of Torah. So why are they going somewhere else? By the way, good text to study when you're sending your kids off to college, right? Call home. When you go away to school, don't forget about me. Okay. All right. So what we do know for a fact is that there is this silence, right? He goes up to offer this sacrifice, his son, sacrifices the ram. We don't see him interact with his dad ever again. Okay, the next time we see him interact with his father is when he's burying him, which we'll come back to. Okay, the second silence is the death of Sarah, right? Chai Sarah. It starts out with her death, right? And what happens? Abraham goes and buys the field of Machpelah to bury her, finds a wife for Isaac, right? But he doesn't interact with Rebekah. He doesn't interact with Isaac that whole time. All right. When Sarah dies, we don't see Isaac. We know that this is a mama's boy, right? That he's devastated, right? And he's only comforted once he brings Rebekah into his mother's tent. Where is he? All right. And traditionally, so you guys know this with Kriya. With Kriya, we put the ribbon. But for kids, you put it over the heart. Everybody else, it's on the other side. Spouses, even parents, it's on the other side. But when you're the kid, you put it over your heart. You are the primary mourner of the primary mourners. It is actually the responsibility of the child to say Kaddish for their parents. Okay, so he should have been the one driving the train. We don't see him at all. All right, and the third silence is actually finding his wife, right? Isaac is never consulted. Do you have a type, right? Like nothing, right? What are you looking for in a partner? None of that, right, happens. He doesn't go. He's not allowed to leave the land. That's fine. He doesn't go. He's this passive player. He receives his wife. Okay, so there's these 3 silences. And so the question becomes, what's happening in those spaces? How does that impact Isaac? right? We don't know. The text doesn't tell us how he reacted to his almost murder by his father, right? The text doesn't tell us about how he mourned his mom, right? The text doesn't tell us if he wanted a partner, right? I mean, he loved her, so it was good. But, okay. What we do know is the first time we see Isaac after the Akedah is when he is introduced to Rebekah, and it says where he was living. So in Genesis 26:62, I'm going to give you both of these, okay?
Isaac had just come back from the vicinity of Beer Lahai Roy, for he was settled in the region of Negev. After the death of Abraham, God blessed his son Isaac, and Isaac settled near Beer Lahai Roy.
All right, perfect. All right, so Isaac, where is Isaac? He lives in Be'er Lahai Roi, it sounds like, right? He's coming from there, he's settled there. And what is this place? Don't worry, I tell you in the next text. All right, what is this place? Genesis 16.
And she called Adonai, who spoke to her, "You are El Roi," by which she meant, "Have I not gone on seeing after my being seen?" Therefore, the well was called Be'er Lahai Roi. It is between Kadesh and Bered.
All right. So if you don't remember 2 weeks ago, this is the scene where Hagar encounters the angel of God and is the first person to name God, right? El Roi. So Be'er Lahai Roi is that magical place of Hagar. This is where Hagar and Ishmael live. So Isaac, when his mom dies, is living, or at least sojourning, right, with Hagar and Ishmael. All right. By the way, this is a little bit of an aside, so I'm just going to do it really quickly. The Midrash Haggadah says that once his mom dies, Isaac feels bad for his dad, and so he goes to get Hagar to bring her back to Abraham, because once mom's not in the house anymore, Abraham and Ishmael can come back home, and they can be reunited. And while the Torah says that her name is Keturah, this second wife of Abraham's, the rabbis say that no, Keturah is just the name that they give to Hagar, because she was like a keter, like a crown. All right. Okay, but what do we actually know? Like, this hints at a lot of things, right? But what we actually know is that Isaac wasn't there when he should have been there, right? We should have heard about what happened when Isaac came down from the mountain. We should have heard about how he felt after his mom died. He should have been part of picking out his spouse, but he's not. And so this is also a text from Rabbi Sachs, which I put in italics, right? Isaac didn't die on the mountain, but it seems as if something in him did die, only to be revived when he married. All right. Rebekah became his wife, and he loved her, and he was comforted after his mother's death. Okay, so now it's Thanksgiving again, right? You think about, some of us are really lucky to have really wonderful parents and want to recreate that in our own home, right? We're all formed by that original family. Either we want to recreate it or we want to not recreate it, right? We want to be different, because that's the model we have, right? That's the model we're handed, whatever we grew up with, right? So there's probably, most of us, there's aspects of that we want to recreate and aspects of that we don't want to recreate, things we want to be the same and things we want to be different. It seems to me as though Isaac wanted to create a home that was different than the one he grew up in, even though he's the redigger of the wells. There were things he liked and things he valued. He's the bearer of the blessing, right? He wants to pass on that blessing. right? But he wants things to be different. What is the home he grew up in, right? His dad couldn't have both kids in the house at the same time, right? He also had a very strong wife, right? How is it going to be different for Isaac? Think about that. So Sarah, Ishmael was supposed to be Sarah's surrogate child, right? She was supposed to have a child through Hagar. This was supposed to be her surrogate child. But she couldn't have him in the same house as Isaac. Rebecca only loves Jacob. But how is that house different? Isaac doesn't let Rebecca get rid of this kid that she doesn't like, right? This time they're going to be all in the house together. All right. So here, the last text on page 4 is this reunion scene where Abraham dies, and we see Isaac and Ishmael burying him in the cave of Machpelah. Right, this was last week's story, right? This is the end of Chaye Sarah. It begins with Sarah's death, ends with Abraham's death. And we know that there is a reunion between the boys, right? We can read between the lines that maybe they're living in the same area. Maybe they're all one happy family now. We don't know. What we do know is this, right? That they can come back together to bury their dad. And that Isaac is okay with this, right? Isaac is okay, so why bless Esau? Again, we're going to read some Rabbi Sachs, and then we'll talk.
Okay. Rabbi Sachs, it is as if Isaac had said, I know what Esau is. He is strong, wild, unpredictable, possibly violent. It is impossible that he should be the person entrusted with the covenant and its spiritual demands. But this is my child. I refuse to sacrifice him as my father almost sacrificed me. I refuse to send him away as my parents sent Hagar and Ishmael away. My love for my son is unconditional. I do not ignore who or what he is, but I will love him anyway, even if I do not love everything he does, because that is how God loves us unconditionally. Even if he does not love everything we do, I will bless him. I will hold him close. And I believe that one day that love may make him a better person than he might otherwise have been.
Okay, so Isaac knew who, according to Rabbi Sachs, right? Isaac knew who Ishmael was. Not Ishmael, sorry. Esau was all along. But he wanted something different. He wanted to love his son for who he was. He knows his kids, right? As opposed to like what we might think when we read the text, right? How can he not tell his boys apart, right? He knew his boys, right? He knew them. But he also knew what it was like to grow up in a house where one was loved and one wasn't. And he knew what it was like to have love withheld or questioned. Isaac is the first patriarch. I think he's the only one. He's the only patriarch where it says that he loved his wife. But maybe he's the patriarch who is the example for us of the father who was actually able to love both of his kids. And according to this, like the juxtaposition of Isaac loved Esau, if you look back in the on this number 3, Sforno, it says, V'yeachev Yitzchak et Esav, right? Also Esau, not only Jacob. Even though he must have been aware that Esau was far less perfect than Jacob. So, Isaac was the one who was able to love his imperfect, temperamental, sometimes violent, very dramatic son. He is the one who refused to only pick one, to only bless one, to only love one. So I would argue, as opposed to what Rabbi Bookman taught me, that while Abraham is a visionary and Jacob is this charismatic community builder, that Isaac is more than a bridge. Isaac is the heart. Because what do we really need for community? We not only need vision and we not only need people, but we need it to be a place of love. Or else what are we doing? So, my blessing for you this Shabbos is that you find people that you love. Maybe it's your family of origin. Maybe it's the family you're building. Maybe it's your Betham family. But I want to wish you all love and rest on this Shabbos. Shabbat Shalom.
Keep everything straight, huh?
Yeah, one thing. It's a theme of deceit.
Yeah.
And
What a mess.
yeah, absolutely. But so was Moses. Moses grew up as a
Okay, guys, have a good week.
You too, Billy. Maybe somebody will send you another Thanksgiving dinner, Bill. Take care, Michael. Let's hope for the Canes. Let's hope for the Canes.